feels like the world has drastically changed. I feel like every day I get into my news feed or I catch up with my relevant business partners, and it feels like, oh my goodness, what has happened today? And in some ways, we're seeing the overhauling of the global economic order. We're seeing tariffs. We're not seeing tariffs. We're seeing supply chain disruptions. And so there's a lot of things happening right now. And my goal in our time together today is not so much to tell you how to feel about this politically or how you should vote or any of those considerations, but what does it look like for us as small business owners or entrepreneurs to navigate this moment from a communicative standpoint? What does it look like for us to navigate this from a communicative standpoint? I'm gonna go back one slide, or no, I'm gonna go back once. There we go. Forward one slide. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. That quote is often associated with Albert Einstein. It was probably more accurately characterized as something that a physicist said about Einstein and his theory, but I just threw his name under there because that's how many people will know the quote. But what are the opportunities? Because it's very easy for us to kind of feel like in this moment, we just need to try to wait for the storm of uncertainty to pass. But I think that's a miscalculation. And what I want to talk about is how do we communicate effectively so that we harness the opportunities that exist in this moment? And so we're going to talk about this. We're going to jump into the conversation. And when we get through the conversation, we'll have some time for Q&A and for talking through things. So let's just go in the reality check. What's happening? Right before this call, I was on the phone with a good friend of mine who works for a popular distiller. And he was talking about right now, we're seeing supply chain disruptions as a Fortune 500 company, but we know that supply chain disruptions are affecting a majority of small businesses. The last statistic I saw was around 73%. Around 73% of small businesses are being affected by supply chain disruptions. Tariff uncertainties are creating pricing pressures. This morning, I was doing some shopping for my family, and I was like, oh, the price of this product went up. It's higher than it used to be, and it feels like it just went up since last week. There's political and economic volatility. So there's uncertainty, there's instability. And as we're seeing right now, there's consumer confidence fluctuations. So the fluctuations in how consumers believe, how they feel confident about the market, about shopping. And so there's a lot of uncertainty right now in the market. And then let's be clear, rising operational cost. It's costing a lot of small businesses more to do the same that they were doing for much lower price than yesterday. Those are just realities of the moment with all of the volatility that's happening. And so it's one thing to face this as a major corporation that can somewhat shield the consumers, shield your constituents from these realities. But when you're a small business, when it's just you, when it's you and 3 employees, you are much more on the front lines of the tariffs and the volatility compared to your larger competitors. So how do we deal with this? This is why I would say to you that communication matters more than ever. Communication is how you shape a perspective for your constituents, for your stakeholders, for your clients, for your customers of what's happening and how they should respond. So this kind of amplifies for us. This is why communication matters. It allows us to shape perspectives and hopefully maintain market share. It matters because during unstable times, your voice, and don't lose sight of this, your voice, wherever that voice circulates, is it on social media? Is it in your newspaper? Is it in your local television station? Where is your voice? Is it on Instagram or TikTok? Your voice becomes your lifeline and your ability to frame the events, to frame the context in a manner that makes your business viable or makes your decisions intelligible to your client base. Why is it your lifeline? Because that's quite a statement to say that this is your lifeline. Customers, stakeholders, and constituents, they crave transparency and honesty. You know what they hate is when they feel like you're using a pandemic, you're using tariffs just to jack up prices. But what they value is when you're transparent and honest with them. Here are the realities that we're facing. Here's the dynamics that we're having to deal with. Here's the challenges that here our framework looks like, because they may not know that. And so when you try to engage in communication that's both transparent and honest, you pull the curtain back for your customers to understand exactly what you're saying in a way that they would not otherwise. But this is not just valuable for your customers, for your constituents. If you work with employees and it's more than just you, they need reassurance and direction. The reality of this instability means you may have to cut someone at some point. You may have to let someone go. There's a variety of things that you might have to do, but they need to know from you what's happening. Get ahead of the communication. What we want in this moment is proactive, not reactive communication. Proactive, not reactive communication. So that requires you as the small business owner, you need to look ahead to see what's happening and see how might this impact my business in a manner that I need to communicate with my employees. Because if you can make sure that you are consistently communicating with these individuals, that will give them a sense of, okay, I know what's happening. The panic comes from the uncertainty, and what you need to do is figure, how can I speak through the uncertainty and give them as much stability as possible? Number three, suppliers. If you are a business that works with suppliers, they require clear expectations. What do we need to know from you? What do we need to know about our arrangement with you, our agreements with you? All of these kinds of things, just keep that line of communication open with you, with them and with you, so that they know here's what's happening, here's what we're looking ahead to. For many of you, you have a key place in your community. Your community looks to you for leadership. They look to you as a source of job creation, because let's be clear, and this is one of the premises that Silver Lining operates from, that small businesses are the lifeblood of communities. Like, small businesses play a vital role in the stability and the economic development of any community. And so if you have that role in your community, guess what? You might need to be at the city council meetings. You need to be working with the chambers of commerce. They're looking to you for leadership, so they need to hear your voice in helping them understand, how do we navigate this moment? A couple of weeks ago, I live in the second largest city in the state of Illinois called Aurora, Illinois. I was at our local city council meeting. The whole conversation was small businesses petitioning our mayor and aldermen and alderwomen on how they could leverage public policy to advance certain pro-business agendas in our community, because they recognize we have a place as small businesses of leadership in our community. That's what your role is. You need to be engaged in what's happening in your community economically, in terms of policies, in terms of zoning, because that's going to help create a context in which you can thrive. When you're silent, and I want to make it clear what I'm saying by silent, silence creates more fear than facts. Silence creates more fear than facts. And what I mean by that is, when you fail to say anything, people are left to their own imaginations. And generally, they will think the worst. And so if you look at the rise of misinformation, if you look at the rise of fake news, or all these things, what we need to do is to hear from you. You may not be able to tell us anything, but even when you can't tell us everything or even anything, let us know when you expect to know something. Let us know when we will hear from you, because that lets us know this person is committed to steadfast communication with the relevant constituencies. We can trust this individual. And then follow up with them. We're still assessing the situation. So we're going to talk about verbiage on that in a little bit. We're going to talk about a clear communication strategy to how to navigate this moment. But you need to be committed to communication, because silence creates more fear than facts. So let's talk about an example of how a small business, even an emerging small business, might do this. We're going to go back to another time of uncertainty, the 2008 financial crisis. I was just graduating grad school at that point, and I'm looking at my job prospects. I'm like, oh my goodness, I might not have a job for like a decade because it was a really scary moment. And I want to look with you at a company named Warby Parker, which was founded in 2010. Let's be clear, 2010 is possibly the worst time to be starting a business because no one's trying to give you a loan and no one's trying to start with a startup. Like, we're looking for secure investments at that moment. So to start a business in 2010 takes a lot of courage. But what did we say earlier? These moments of uncertainty present what? Opportunities. Do we know how to leverage communication in order to realize the opportunities or to take hold of the opportunities that exist right now? Let me tell you a little bit about the story of Warby Parker. When traditional retailers were closing stores, they're closing stores, it's really bad in 2010. They're cutting communication. For Wharton School of Business students, they launched Warby Parker during the depths of the recession. They saw opportunity where everyone else saw disaster. So they launched this business. And this business, which is still going, is they're selling glasses. It's something really simple. But what they do when they try to start this, look at their communication strategy. They start this business, and their business model is a direct-to-consumer model. Direct-to-consumer model, they're selling glasses, like eyeglasses. What defines their model from a communication standpoint is their radical transparency. What they do with their customers on social media, in print advertising, they openly discuss their direct-to-consumer model with their customers, and they explain why glasses as a general thing are overpriced. Here's what you're going to pay with, this supplier. Here's what you're going to pay here. You're being overpriced. They're explaining their model and why they offer an advantage in this moment over other customers, or over other suppliers of glasses. You shouldn't go with that person. You should go with us. They offer a great deal of transparency that is just unprecedented for this moment when everyone is backing off on communication because they don't want to give people bad news or unpleasant news. We've talked about this in previous sessions for those of you who have joined me for some of the media sessions previously. They shared the founder's personal frustration with expensive eyewear. So they connected it with a personal story. You all, with your small businesses, don't lose sight in this moment of your personal story. What led you to start this business? What led you to start this endeavor? Make that part of your narrative in this moment. Do not just focus on, well, here's what's happening with tariffs. Here's what's happening with our supply chain. Sure, you need to talk about those things, but don't lose sight of the personal. Why is that so important? It gives people an opportunity to connect with you, to identify with you. It allows you to feel more part of a community that they can join part of. Like, I feel like I know the people who run Warby Parker because of the ways in which they talk about their decision to start this business. Your personal story, which we've talked about previously in these sessions, your personal story is more important now than ever before. How do you use social media? This is what they did really well. They use social media not just to advertise their product, but they use it to create conversations about people's experiences with eyewear. They use it to create conversations that would draw people to their company. So they might pop a question. Tell us about your experience trying to shop for eyeglasses. All of a sudden, you have a range of people weighing in, and they're able to really get information about who their client base is for free. They're doing market research by just creating a conversation with the people they want to serve. That's not only just doing market research, but it's also inviting people to participate in the community that they are creating. That's why this is so important. This is why this is so valuable. They offered a clear value. I'm sorry, I went a little. They offered a clear value proposition and consistently messaged 95 glasses, including prescription lenses. So in that messaging, there was no uh, obscure pricing. They like, this is what it costs. This is what you're going to pay. And people felt like, I know exactly what you're offering and I know what your value proposition is. There was clarity in what they offered. There was clarity in how they communicated. And in the so-called Great Recession, this company grew rapidly. It grew from 4 students into $1 billion company by doing what? Communicating clearly when others went silent. They communicated clearly when others went silent. So what's the lesson here? While competitors hid behind corporate speak or even just silence, Warby Parker, they used plain language, authentic storytelling to do what? Build trust during uncertain times. So, what do you need to be thinking about from a communicative standpoint in this moment? How do we build trust with our clients during this moment of instability? How do we build trust? So, that sounds great. And many of you are like, sure, yeah, let's build trust. But how do we do it? This is difficult because there's so many voices out there trying to communicate. So, what is the strategy that we need to employ? Let's talk about that. We're going to talk about what I call the clear communication method. And please forgive me, my allergies have decided to make a guest appearance today. Uh, we're going to talk about the clear communication method. Number one, it starts with being candid. Being candid. So when you're being candid, that starts with being honest about the challenges that you're facing without creating panic. So be honest about those challenges. What are you facing? But you need to learn how to articulate that in a way that does not foster panic. So here's the supply chain challenges that we're facing. Here are the tariff challenges that we're facing. But we are committed to serving you faithfully. Like you always want to blanket. Here's the challenges with your commitment. Here's what we're looking at. So how might you word that in messaging to clients, to consumers, to partners? We're experiencing supply delays like many businesses. That's a simple way to word that. We're experiencing supply delays like many businesses. Prices may need to adjust due to increased cost. You're being transparent. We may have to raise prices. We're working on solutions and we'll update you weekly. Now, I'm not saying you need to do it every week. You're going to know your business model better than I will. But what you need to do is think about what level of updates is good for the people that you work with. What frequency do they need to hear from you? And so, whatever that is, commit to that and actually do the work. If you are not competent with social media, do yourself a favor, go on YouTube, go on any number of places and just Google, how do I utilize Facebook for my small business? How do I utilize X? How do I utilize Instagram for my small business? If you have a smartphone that can take a picture and you can type in words, you can utilize social media effectively. So this first aspect of this model is being candid. The second element, listen. Listen. This is important to know how people are thinking about this. You want to create channels for feedback and respond promptly. So this could be an email, it could be social media platforms. You're going to figure out what's best for your business. But you want to create channels for feedback. And when someone says something to you, respond promptly. So if you create the channel, you can't let someone email you and you just sit on that email for a full week. You need to respond promptly. Even if you don't have a great answer, you can say, thank you for that question. We're still assessing the situation. We are going to get back to you by this date with the response. And even kicking the can down the road is still an answer, but they need to know that they can get in contact with you and they can get a reply. What is one of the biggest frustrations that we all have whenever we're trying to make a return or deal with our internet service or something like that? We call the company and we sit on the phone with them. And we sit on the phone waiting, listening to soothing music. Don't be the same. Distinguish yourself. Be faithful to communicate with the people. They will remember that. There's companies I work with all the time just because I know when I call them, I'm going to get an answer. I'll give an example of this. We don't have a major problem with this, but I rely on a pest control service in my community. And you know why I work with this pest control company? They do great work, yes, but I know when I have a problem, I can call the owner and he's going to pick up my call. And I know he's going to get back to me. I know he's going to serve me. He's going to do whatever he can to make sure if the job's not done right, he's going to come back and do another treatment. So you might think of things like regular customer surveys. If you work with employees, check-ins, give them a space to tell you what they're thinking about. Monitor social media, even things like community forums or like community appreciation days if you have a brick and mortar kind of space, or you can use the social media channels for that. But you want to make sure that you're having opportunity to listen to people. Number 3, empathetic. Be empathetic in how you communicate. You want to acknowledge the human impact of business decisions. You want to acknowledge the human impact of business decisions. Talk about prices. It's harder for families to get what they need. Talk about your employees. We understand the inconvenience this creates. Your concerns are valid and important to us. We're all navigating this together, but you have to make sure that you don't lose sight of the human component. Don't lose sight of the human component of the decisions that you're having to make, because so many people are making decisions purely based on dollars and cents. And you might have to do something similar, but don't ignore the fact that this is happening in the world of lived experiences. These are people we're talking about. So be empathetic in how you're communicating these things back to people. And I'll just say in a few minutes, we got a few more slides to go, but we're going to make some time for questions and answers. So if you have questions, if you have comments, we're going to make some time for that in a few minutes. Actionable. So we have candid, we have listen, we have be empathetic. 4th, actionable. Always provide next steps or solutions to concerns, problems, or messages. Offer specific timelines when possible. If you offer a product and you're raising the price on this product, but you have another product which may not be as good, but can also get the job done much cheaper. Offer alternative options. Like, help think with the people. Offer clear instructions for customers. Offer regular progress updates. What I'm suggesting to you that in this moment, if you want to capture this opportunity, communicate in a way that gives people something to do, because right now, people feel what? They feel helpless to the uncertainty that engulfs us all. You're providing action steps that are going to guide them. Oh, I can do this, or I can do this. Maybe you launch a new promotion that offers a discount, or other steps that give people, I can do this as a response to this change or this uncertainty. All of those are great things to help clients understand what they can do and give them a sense of what's important here, agency. You want to give them a sense of agency, that I am not a helpless victim here. I can do something. Next, reliable. You want to be reliable. You want to make sure that you establish consistent communication rhythms. You want to make sure you establish consistent communication rhythms. So they need to know when to expect to hear from you. If there's any kind of crisis in terms of disruption to your supply chain, if you face something along those lines, provide weekly, or depending on how urgent, maybe even daily updates during the crisis. Make sure that you're messaging across all of your channels. And when I say channels, I mean social media, emails, print media, consistent messaging across all channels. The biggest disaster that you could run into is saying one thing on social media and another thing via email. They're going to get confused and your communication is going to be deemed unreliable. So make sure that you offer consistent messaging across all channels. If you make a commitment, follow through on the commitment. Follow through on your commitments. If you promise you're going to do this for me, do it. You're trying to build trust in this moment. And at some point, you're probably going to make a mistake. If you make a mistake, admit it quickly. Don't just dig down. We regret that this happened. We're seeking to make amends. I mean, maybe not the word amends, but just acknowledge a mistake. That's okay. It's okay to make a mistake. It's a bigger problem when you won't admit it and you won't deal with it. So some general practical communication strategies. If you're dealing with supply chain issues, do not disappear or make vague promises. What you should do is like, due to global supply issues, delivery times are currently 2 to 3 weeks longer than usual. We're working with alternative suppliers and we'll update you by your specific date. That's being proactive. We're going to update you. Here's what's happening. If pricing changes, don't implement surprise price increases. Be proactive. Let them hear from you first. Raw material costs have increased by 15% industry-wide. Starting, we'll need to adjust our prices by 8%. Here's how we kept the increase minimal. We're trying to keep the prices as low as possible. So be proactive in communicating that. For political and economic uncertainty, don't take political sides or ignore the elephant in the room. This is not the time for us unless that's your business model and you are like a political communication firm, that's a different conversation. But for the sake of your business, you're probably going to have people who feel differently about everything that's happening in the world right now. You're not here to take political sides or to ignore the elephant in the room. What you should do is we're monitoring policy changes that could affect our industry. Regardless of political developments, we remain committed to serving you and will adapt as needed. You see what we just did there? Regardless of what happens, we are committed to serving you. And so we're trying to build consumer confidence in your business. So these would be some of the practical communication strategies. So we exist in a moment of uncertainty, but we also understand that uncertainty is not immune to opportunity. There are opportunities that exist for you all. We looked at the example of Warby Parker and how they grew to a multi-billion-dollar valuation starting in the midst of the Great Recession. And what was key to their rapid rise was how they communicated with their clients. We talked about why communication matters. And then we adopted the CLEAR strategy, the CLEAR model. Candid, listen, empathetic, actionable, and reliable as things that need to define your communication strategies at this moment. Then we just talked about some practical communication strategies, whether you're facing supply chain issues, pricing changes, or political economic uncertainty. What I want you all to feel in this moment is the same that we want for our clients, customers, and constituents. I don't want you all to feel the victims of everything that's happening. I want you all to feel capable and competent to respond confidently through communication as a means of continuing to build your business, even in moments of uncertainty. And with that, we got some time for questions, comments, concerns, all the above.